E vökulli áþján is the debut full-length album from VAFURLOGI. This is an Icelandic project, and now a full band from Thorir Gardarsson, who's best known for his work in Sin Mara today, as well as Fartidauti, back in the kind of the early 2000s, all the way till 2018 or so when they split up. This was essentially a side project that was developed beyond 2007 or so, that he was funneling in songs that were just not fitting for any other realm. These were more melodic songs. Originally, I believe, just inspired by 90s black metal, and eventually he produced several demos and several years worth of songs in a backlog that have become sort of an abstraction of the orthodox black metal canon in a way that touches upon something more melodic. And I know you might be thinking, well, doesn't it just sound like Sin Mara? But no, I don't think that band is exactly as melodic as you remember. It's been a couple of years since one of their records released, and this is much more notably focused in that realm. Now, describing exactly what happened between 2007 and 2018 when they started, I believe, recording and writing this album it's sort of hard to really elucidate, because essentially what I've read from interviews was that this album was written as a new addition to other material that will be used in a further album. So he didn't use any of the songs that he'd written up to that point, but rather wrote a new album in this style, and that became this, and it was done in about 2 years. So the reason that it took a couple of years for this to come out beyond 2018 was because it was essentially written between 2018 and 2020, and then recorded beyond that, and then finalized beyond that. So it really is truly a side project, and it's only becoming a full band now that they've got this record out and they're giving it a go. Now, this style certainly does focus in on a lot of things that are typical about his work in terms of different semi-dissonant phrases, certain guitar techniques as a guitarist and whatnot, and a vocalist. You will recognize his voice and his writing style and all that. Most of this record is just him and a drummer, Ragnar Sverrisson from Helfra and Beneath, a death metal band you should know he was previously in. So what is this band and exactly what do they sound like? Now that's going to change over the course of the full record. This is a big experience that you're not going to get in just a 15-second clip, but we'll get an idea here with how this sounds, and I'll kind of describe how the record goes as we pass through. The interesting thing about this well of ideas that he's working from is that it's not as restricted by theme or specificity as some of his other projects. And so as we get into this record, a Sin Mara record, of course, needs to sound front to back like a very themed and perfected thing, and that they all do, and they're very beautifully buttoned up. I'm a huge fan. But this band is able to flex its muscles in different directions. It starts out with a very strong melodic voice. It works in a little bit of like what I would describe as Enslaved, kind of below the lights era, before they fully went in that new progressive direction. But they'd worked in some cleaner tones and these what I call escalator riffs, black metal escalator riffs. I think the interesting thing is that it starts out sounding quite eclectic. It sounds like a little bit like a pagan black metal record. It's got a little bit of a Winder-like touch to some of it. There's a sort of heroic sound to it. It sort of has a little bit of a pride and a thump to the chest in some of it, and other songs are a little bit more tragedian. They're a little bit more self-involved, and they seem to be more divulgent. And so the tone kind of changes a little bit over time until we start to hit more of a downward spiral. I feel like the Falcon aspect of side A begins to turn into something a little bit more dark, melodic, and dissonant as the things become more erratic and the tempo starts to change and on over on side B. So there's definitely a shift in mood and tone as we move on, and I feel like there's less of a purposed showmanship on the second half of this record, but on the other hand it creates more of a tunnel vision, more of a focus, more of a sort of immersive element to it, which I appreciated even more as a fan of melodic black metal from the 90s at its core, where it was an intense funneling of dark energy, and I feel like they really pull that off in the second half of this record, and the first half is sort of a spirited movement through a lot of really big ideas. So it's almost either unintentionally uneven in terms of its sides, or just very focused on the second one. Either way, I enjoyed this record quite a bit as a fan of black metal of this type, and I think it does well to not be a typical black metal record from Iceland. I think a lot of people sort of began to typecast the entire nation, and I think there's still a lot of great variety available there. That said, we do get production from Stephen Lockhart, and for me, that's perfect for this sound. It's very fitting for his work. It's a long time sort of collaboration, and it works for a reason. They've come up with a great result here. So I think this is one it's going to be the kind of record that you need to sit down with and really give its due. Give it time to breathe. Give it time to work out its obscure melodies alongside the very outright, sort of expressive side of the band. And what you get is a mix of things that are somewhat accessible, but also others that are very deep in the pocket. And I think that's a great mix. It's a great way to introduce the general breadth of the sound of this band. And now that it's a four-piece, I think they'll continue to expand that idea into bigger things. And I believe they're also planning on releasing a record which pulls from the older songs and the demos written beforehand. So a lot to look forward to here. It's a great record. It's one of the better records of September for my own taste, and certainly comes with a very high recommendation from me as just an exceptional overall experience with a fantastic album art and whatnot. So check it out for yourself. It released on September 13th, and go ahead and read my review if you'd like to read more of my thoughts.